let's just jump right in. Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're going to completely shatter this illusion that you perceive the world perfectly. I mean, we walk around every single day assuming our eyes work like, high-definition video cameras, just passively recording everything exactly as it happens. But they don't. Not even close. Using some truly mind-bending psychology and behavioral science, we're going to uncover the massive blind spots hiding literally right in front of your face.
So let me ask you a question that might just mess with your perception of reality a bit. Look around the room you're sitting in right now. You probably feel like you're taking the whole thing in, right? But what if I told you your brain is actively, deliberately deleting a massive percentage of your environment? What if the things you are absolutely positive you'd notice are the exact things you are completely blind to?
To prove this, we got to talk about one of the most famous psychological experiments of all time. This was done back in 2001 by Most and his colleagues. Picture this. You're watching an animated video. It's got two lively teams of stickmen, one drawn in white, the other in black, and they're just rapidly moving around passing a basketball. Now, the participants were given very explicit instructions. They were told to intensely focus only on the white stickman team and count the exact number of passes they make. But what they didn't know was the absolute absurdity that was about to unfold. Right in the middle of the video, a person in a full-blown gorilla suit walks right through the middle of the stickman game, stops, thumps its chest, and just casually walks off.
Now you'd think a giant gorilla crashing a stickman basketball game would be literally impossible to miss, right? Well, the data revealed something wild. Exactly 50% of the participants completely failed to notice it. Half the people watching were so locked in on counting those passes that a bizarre, highly visible event happened right in front of their eyes, and their brain just didn't even register it. No way, right? But it's true.
Okay, so to understand how on earth our brains can just delete a giant primate from our vision, we first have to look at selective attention. This is the exact cognitive mechanism at work when those folks were intensely focused on counting the basketball passes. And look, selective attention is incredibly useful. It's the whole reason you can read a book in a noisy coffee shop or focus on a single friend's voice in a super crowded room. Your brain acts like a spotlight. It illuminates one specific task and intentionally throws everything else completely into the shadows.
But here's the catch. That intense spotlight creates a massive blind spot, which we call inattentional blindness. Because your focus is so narrow and so intense, anything outside of it, yes, even a massive, obvious gorilla, goes entirely unseen. And it's not like the participants looked away for a second. They were staring right at the screen. That gorilla was literally reflecting onto their retinas, but their focused minds simply refused to process the image.
The really crucial point to grasp here is that this is not a visual deficit. Your eyes, they're working perfectly fine. Actually, this is your brain actively protecting you. Think about it. We live in a world of infinite sensory data. If your brain actually tried to process every single sight, sound, and movement all at exactly the same time, you'd be instantly paralyzed by sensory overload. So your brain has to be absolutely ruthless about what it lets into your conscious awareness.
It comes down to the fact that our attentional capacity has strict metabolic and cognitive limits. We only have so much mental energy to go around. And honestly, the human brain really struggles with parallel processing. Evaluating multiple, competing things simultaneously is just not our strong suit. So when your mental bandwidth is totally maxed out with one task, like counting those passes, your mind just automatically filters out the unexpected to save energy. It prioritizes the immediate goal and deletes the rest of the world.
So, what does this all mean for our everyday reality, especially when we pick up our smartphones? Because if our brains naturally delete a gorilla just to save a few calories of cognitive energy, what exactly is happening when we're scrolling through the chaotic, never-ending streams of our social media feeds?
Well, this brings us straight to the concept of the echo chamber. See, just like our brains filter out that unexpected gorilla in the physical world, we actively filter our social and digital worlds too. We naturally gravitate toward environments where our existing opinions, our political leanings, our core beliefs, where all that gets constantly reinforced. We surround ourselves with peers and sources that share our exact attitudes. And what that does is create this really comfortable space where contradictory information basically just doesn't exist.
But here's where it gets a bit scary. It's not just our brains doing the filtering anymore. Algorithms actually supercharge this human tendency by trapping us inside filter bubbles. Tech platforms use recommendation systems that are specifically designed to capture your attention by prioritizing content based on what you've already clicked on.
They're doing the selective filtering for us, running in the background without us even realizing it's happening. They just feed us exactly what we want to see, which creates this hyper-personalized universe of information. It feels like the whole world, but really, it's just a tiny, tiny slice of it.
According to reinforcement theory, we get sucked into these bubbles through three really specific behavioral steps. Step 1 is selective exposure. This is where we actively seek out information that rewards us by telling us, yep, you're right. Now, if we accidentally stumble onto contradictory information, step 2 kicks in, selective perception. We instantly misread or minimize the relevance of that opposing info. And then finally, step 3 is selective retention. We literally just forget the facts that contradict our existing beliefs. And we do all of this, the whole shebang, just to avoid the psychological discomfort of being wrong.
And that right there illustrates the core illusion of the digital age. We absolutely love to think we're getting a balanced, diverse view of reality. We assume our feed is like this modern digital town square representing the whole public sphere. But in truth, what we actually see is a hyper-personalized feed that just confirms what we already believe. Researchers have noted that even when people firmly believe they're consuming diverse media, they're usually just experiencing an illusion of diversity. Underneath it all, it's just a much deeper ideological sameness.
The real-world effects of these digital echo chambers are incredibly profound. They're fundamentally altering how democratic exchange and consensus building actually function. We're seeing the fragmentation of the public sphere and isolated, polarized groups that don't even share a common set of facts anymore. And because we only see what confirms our own biases, our vulnerability to misinformation goes through the roof. Falsehoods just spread like wildfire inside a bubble, mostly because nobody inside that bubble actually wants to challenge the narrative.
But why do we let algorithms do this to us? Honestly, it comes down to visceral psychological discomfort. Admitting error physically hurts. Our brains are literally hardwired to protect our self-esteem. To maintain a sense of security and intellectual competence, the mind automatically prioritizes desired conclusions. This little biological quirk is exactly what makes these comforting, highly curated digital spaces so unbelievably addictive. So how do we fight back against this algorithmic inattentional blindness? Well, research on human-AI interaction points to a really critical shift. We need to move from passive personalization to active customization. When AI curates your content automatically, it totally bypasses your conscious decision-making. But when we actively customize our feeds, by manually searching out opposing viewpoints, tweaking our settings, deliberately following diverse voices, we keep our brain's executive functioning engaged. We're taking the wheel back from the algorithm.
Ultimately, knowing the limits of our attention is the very first step to truly seeing the world clearly. Once we acknowledge our own cognitive biases, understand that our mental energy is finite, and accept that our brains are literally built to filter things out, we can finally stop taking our digital feeds at face value. We can start intentionally seeking out the exact information that our brains and our algorithms are working so hard to hide from us. I want to leave you with this really powerful thought from the original Gorilla study. It sums everything up perfectly. Quote, "Conscious perception requires attention. If the mind is fully occupied, even a large, distinct stimulus can remain invisible to the observer." End quote. It's just such a vital reminder of the massive gap between what is physically visible in the world around us and what actually gets perceived by our minds.
So as you go about your day today, as you're having conversations, making decisions, and especially as you're scrolling through your timeline, I really want you to ask yourself one question. What gorilla did you miss today? What reality has your brain or your algorithm completely filtered out while you were busy counting the passes? Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer. Stay curious and keep your eyes open.